The poet Rumi writes, "If you knew yourself for even one moment, if you could just glimpse your most beautiful face, maybe you wouldn't slumber so deeply in that house of clay. Why not move into your house of joy and shine into every crevice? For you are the secret treasure bearer, and always have been. Didn't you know?" Well, here we are, sliding inevitably towards Christmas. And, we don't have to worry, though, because, we don't have to lapse into political correctness. The essential history and meaning of Christmas is inclusive. Anyone ever watch The Simpsons?
No.
Well, just remember, as Bart Simpson said, he said, "Aren't we forgetting the true meaning of Christmas? The birth of Santa." There's a wonderful story that's told of a Texas family who was working with a cultural exchange program and who, during the last part of the Cold War, sponsored a visit by a rabbi from Russia. And during the Christmas season, they took this rabbi to a local Chinese restaurant for dinner one night. And the family was sitting there eating and having a good time. They finished, and after the meal was over, the waiter brought them a check, and in addition, brought each of them a small brass Christmas ornament. And they looked at the ornaments and appreciated them, and then looked again, and they all laughed because on the back of each one was stamped "Made in India." And as they were laughing, they looked over, and the rabbi was kind of tearing up, and the family was kind of afraid that they had maybe offended him with all of the talk of Christmas, since he was Jewish, and he just smiled at him and said, No, that's not it at all. And I'm just moved to be in this wonderful place where a Buddhist gives a Jew a Christmas gift made by a Hindu. And see, for me, that kind of gets to the point of our celebrations. It gets more to the point than any kind of slogan of Jesus is the reason for the season. It reminds me that Christmas has always been a blend of many cultures, many traditions, many myths. It doesn't in any way negate the power of the Christian story. In fact, it enriches it. See, 4,000 years ago, a couple thousand years before Jesus, in ancient Mesopotamia, there was this legend of Marduk. And in the legend, Marduk conquers the monster Tiamat and sets the scene for creation. But each year, the monster fights back. And as a result, the days get shorter. The crops lay barren. And life itself hangs in the balance. And then each year, late in December, they celebrated rituals. Rituals that they believed would help Marduk win his battle with Tiamat. And the ultimate sign of that victory was the return of the light, the lengthening of the days. See, Christmas was never a purely Christian celebration. It was always a mixture of various cultural practices. Well before the time of Jesus, Romans celebrated Saturnalia and gave gifts to loved ones at this time of year. Anglo-Saxons and the Teutonic tribes of Germany had winter holidays and used things like the Druids' sacred symbol of the mistletoe and the German symbol of the evergreens. And even the Norse had their ancient symbols of gods and sleighs. So Christmas has always been a multifaceted kind of celebration. And see, while we now understand that the winter solstice is punctual and reliable, most of the early Christmas solstice myths emerged at a time when the return of the sun wasn't certain. People wondered about it. And so they created ceremonies, both as a reassurance and as an encouragement to the gods for the light to return. And they created huge bonfires on hills to imitate the sun and to lure it back. They decorated their houses with greenery to imitate the greening earth and to lure the green earth to return. And when the days lengthened and the sun shone brighter, then the earth began to green again. The miracle happened. And they believed that their rituals had something to do with it. When the light returned, they stopped all of their regular activities. And you know what they did? They had a big party. Maybe a couple of days after the winter solstice. See, and it's also the case that Jesus wasn't the only significant birth celebrated at this time of year. Apollo, Dionysus, Odin, Opalia, the wife of Saturn, the god Attis, were all said to be born around this time of year. And so it's possible that first and second generation Christians were so inspired by their experience of Jesus that they created a birth story fitting one of the great gods of their time. And they located that birth story in December to connect the birth of hope in their lives with the return of the light. Light is one of these universal symbols that we have. At this time of year, we long for a little more sunlight or a little more warmth. Days get dark. And so we have these celebrations. Christmas, Hanukkah, Diwali, which is in the Hindu tradition, Kwanzaa. Even sometimes Ramadan, their Ramadan lanterns when the lunar calendar aligns correctly. They're all festivals of light, all talking about this magic of light coming back into life. This happens at least in the northern hemisphere. It's interesting to note that even in the southern hemisphere, though, where they're in the midst of summer, folks still typically decorate their houses with lights, and they still attend candlelight services on Christmas Eve. But now with our technological knowledge, with our understanding of science, with our knowledge of the cosmos, of how the sun and the stars move in their orbits, it's kind of easy to lose the basic message that was originally in these celebrations. The ancients didn't know if the light would return, so they created rituals and ceremonies. But the mystery that we celebrate is a little different kind of mystery. It still has to do with the return of the light, but we understand that return of the light is a metaphorical message. The mystery that we encounter, the mystery that we all struggle with what to do with at one time or another, is what to do when the inner light of who we are has dimmed or has been extinguished. And what the message of the season is about is that even when this inner spark seems to have been stomped on and doused with water, that it is still there somewhere waiting to be rekindled into a burning torch. And so it's this inner phenomena, this inner dynamic, this inner mystery that becomes most important for us. Thomas Merton was a Trappist monk in the midst of the last century. Once noted, he said, "At the center of our being is the pure glory of God. It's like a pure diamond blazing with the invisible light of heaven. It is in everybody, and if we could see it, we would see these billions of points of light coming together in the face and blaze of a sun that would make all darkness and cruelty of life vanish completely. If we could but see it." Christmas is about the returning of the light. But it's not, it's not just that when we're down that we can focus on the light within and somehow rekindle it. It's not about us pulling ourselves up by our own psychic emotional bootstraps and lighting our own fires. But it is recognizing that in our midst there is a fire that burns, that there is a light that burns, and that light comes from the fire of love, from the power of compassion, from the force of creative affection. It's in this place that the light is discovered. And it's in the stories of giving that we recognize that our lives and that our hearts are kindled. Not so much by our own power, but rather by being in the midst of loving community. that the light is rekindled by being willing to lend whatever spark that we might have to those around us. The spark that we give is the spark of love. And when we give it freely, we discover that spark grows and that there's even more to give. And then when we give that, we discover that there's even more to give. The power of creative affection. That's what the story of the wise men is about. The story of the wise men demonstrates a kind of magic. I mean, here are these wise guys from the East in search of a chosen one. There's somebody special that they are searching for. And what are they expecting? They're expecting a king. Palaces, royalty, wonderful stuff. And instead, what do they find? They find a stable. They find simplicity. They find humility. They find compassion. Do they let their expectations sidetrack them? No. What happens is that they demonstrate the willingness and ability in that place to see themselves surrounded by the holy. In this simple situation, this simple birth in a stable, they discover that their own inner lives are rekindled and enlivened. And so in recognition, they give their gifts in love. John's Gospel, which is the latest and probably most philosophical of the Gospels, doesn't even tell a birth story. I mean, it just goes straight to the point. John talks about the coming of the light that shines in the dark and is the light of all people. This is the light that is universal, that's there for everyone. It's the all-encompassing love of the creative breath. This is the gift given in the very creation of the heavens and the earth, of the cosmos. It's the gift that is given in the very presence of life, in the blood that flows through your veins. And the recognition of the universal light of love is the universally inclusive message of Christmas. See, I would like to suggest that if you could just see yourself, the way the rest of us see you, if you could just see the incredible beauty and the depths of heart and soul that we see in you, you would just topple over in amazement. You'd fall on your fanny and laugh. See, if we truly saw ourselves in this way, all fear and all judgment would vanish. And kindness would overcome the darkness. And Christmas would be over. Peace and blessings.